Kidarkenu Bakodesh, I'd like to start with a beracha, Leilun Shmat, Rabbi Avraham Hamra ben Tere Esther, Aliza Luza bat Henriette, Moshe ben Aliza Luza, Yitzchak Hillel ben Aliza Luza, Henriette Leah bat Aliza Luza, Sharon Moshe Netanel ben Aliza, Victoria bat Balus, Rachel bat Badrie, Meir ben Rosa. Ruach Hashem tenichenam bechan Eden. Amen.
Tova bat princess.
Tova bat princess. Ruach Hashem tenichena bechan Eden. Hem v'chol b'nei Yisrael u'b'noi Yisrael ha'shochvim imo. Imahem b'chlal ha'chamim ha'selichot v'chein yiratzon v'nomar amen. Please, Rabotai, keep in mind tonight all the berachot that you're going to make will be Leilun Nishmat. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Ha'olam Sha'akol Nihya Bidvaro. Amen. You know what's amazing? I'm looking down at the list, reading the names. And for a moment, to stop by the name Aliza Luza bat Henriette, recently we redid the entire Shmirat Halashon series. Back in 2018, when the story took place, we started an audio series, Shmirat Halashon Halachot, that went out every single night to over 3,000 people. Leilun Nishmat Aliza Luza and her children. And what's amazing to me is, just recently, I heard this incredible story. And by the way, this is not part of my dirashat tonight, but I looked at the name, and I cannot hold back from telling you what I'm about to tell you. This is a story that Reb Steinem and Zechet Tzadik Lebracha told everyone around him that it's a mitzvah lifarsem. This is a mitzvah to tell it over. People should know this. And the story goes that there was a woman in Bnei Brak who had a young son. He was, I believe, 16 years old. And he was a prodigy. He was something incredibly special. He was brilliant. He was a matmid. They already had incredible expectations for this boy. Incredible expectations. And suddenly, this boy was taken from this world through an accident. And the mother just couldn't be consoled. The mother was broken, mamash. That Friday night, she likes candles for Shabbat. And later on in the night, she's sitting at home on a Friday night Shabbat crying. And she falls asleep. And she has a dream. And her young son, 16 years old, comes to her in the dream. And he says, Ima, it's Shabbat. You're not supposed to be crying. You're not supposed to be mitabelet on Shabbat. She says, what can I tell you? I can't help myself. I miss you. He says, Ima, don't miss me. I happen to be in a place that is so incredibly high, right next to Kisei HaKavod, in the mechitzot of tzaddikim. I'm in such an incredible place. Please, let that console you. Let that alone be a consolement. She says, you consoled me. But she says, why? Why do these things happen? What's going on? And he tells her an incredible thing. He tells her that, Ima, I want to tell you a secret. Shamayim doesn't let me tell because Anistarot Lashem Elokeinu. But I want to tell you one thing. That the one thing that's holding Mashiach Tzidkenu back from coming, after all the tzarot and everything that Klal Yisrael is going through, the one thing, people are still speaking Lashon Hara and hurting other people. And the shalom in Klal Yisrael is not near what it should be. He said to her, if people would know that this was the only thing that's holding back Geula, boy would they take these halachot seriously. And then he told her, he said, I want you to know that the Chafetz Chaim is standing by Kisei HaKavod, and he actually prays every single day for the people that are learning Shmirat HaLashon Halachot on a daily basis. One of the greatest channels of Yeshuot today in this world is the learning of Shmirat HaLashon, to guard one's tongue and not speak bad against other people. No Lashon Hara. And he says especially those people that pass on the halachot to other people, and they're mizakeh the Rabbim with these halachot, the Chafetz Chaim prays for them for unbelievable Yeshuot. He stands in front of Kisei HaKavod and prays for those people. He says, Ima, let people know that if they want to be zocheh to geulot, to Yeshuot, this is the way to go today. The story only happened a few years ago, when it came to the desk of the great Reb Steinemann, Zechet Tzadik L'Bracha at the time, and he heard over the details, and he asked many pointed questions. It was then that he said, it's a mitzvah, l'farsem. When I heard this, that the Chafetz Chaim is standing by Kisei HaKavod, and he's praying for the people that are learning the laws of Shmirat HaLashon, I said to myself, we got to redo the series. The first time we did it in 2018, it was audio. This time, let's do it in video. Let's do it again. Let's start from scratch as if it was never done. And let's do it in a way that will bring interest to people, that it shouldn't be dry. So we started over the system again. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you that currently now, instead of it just going out to 2,000 or 3,000 people, but now we have it on YouTube, we have it on iTorah, we have it on Torah Anytime. Currently, it already reached a 10,000 person subscribe list. And we do it every morning, Lilu Nishmat, Aliza Luza Bat Henriette and her children. As the family and the friends of this beloved family, if you want to really bring aliyah to the neshamot, there's nothing greater than to be able to tap in and listen to these halachot. Because these are the halachot which is the last step before the coming of Mashiach. We need it. With that in mind, I'd like to start tonight's shiur. Lilu Nishmat, the names we mentioned, Chacham Alber, the entire family, Aliza Luza, Moshe ben Eliza, Yitzchak Hillel ben Eliza, Henriette Leah bat Eliza, Sharon Moshe Nitanel ben Eliza, Victoria bat Balus, Rachel bat Badria, Meir ben Rosa. Should be a tremendous aliyah for the neshamot, the Torah that we're going to say tonight. We're coming out from one of the greatest holidays of the Jewish people. And when you come out of the Chag, if you don't take something with you, then it's a question if you ever experienced it in the first place. Think about this for a minute. Sukkot, at the end of the holiday, there's a Havdalah. Pesach, at the end of the holiday, there's a Havdalah. At the end of every Shabbat, there's an end. There's a Havdalah. Chanukah, there's no Havdalah. Because a Jew does not separate from Chanukah when it ends. The light of Chanukah was meant to accompany us into the entire year. There is no Havdalah. We're in Galut now. We're in such Galut Yavan, we're in such darkness, that even when the holiday ends, the darkness is still there. How are you supposed to be able to go into a year in such darkness if you don't carry with you the light of Chanukah? And therefore the Rabbi said, Chanukah, no Havdalah. This goes into the year with us. We need to carry the light with us into the rest of the year. So we need to take something from this holiday. What exactly are we coming out of this holiday with? It's beautiful. We had presents. It's beautiful. We had all different types of parties, misibot, all different types of sufganiyot. But if that's, my friend, all you came out of the holiday with, then it's good we came together tonight. It's good we came together tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to open your hearts and understand that Chanukah today is so important to us in Galut because it defines the Jew of America. You might not know this. We're living in the United States of America, but we're living in Greece. We're living in Yavan. Everything that Yavan tried to do, we are living in a country that succeeded in doing. Every step. All the way back from way when until the current situation of social media, they got us. We're into their music. We're into their culture. We like to dress like them. Our moda, our fashion chases them. Our styles of thinking, the cars we drive, the lives we live, is all based around the American idol. We want to be like the celebrities. We want to look like them. We want to come over. We like talking like them. To us, that's hip. That's in. That's fashion. We get all moved by the great celebrities of the United States. We're in awe when we watch them go in their limousines from one rehab center to the other rehab center, and we say, we want to be like them. They can't keep a marriage for more than 2 weeks, but we want to be like them. Isn't that a pele? We're trying to be like the Goyim, and yet the Goyim are looking at us and saying, Jews, you are meant to be the light unto the nations. You are meant to be the light unto the world. Don't forget who you are. You are meant to be the oil. Because the oil is the only liquid that no matter what you pour it into, it never mixes. It always separates and it rises to the top. So to a Jew, we don't mix. No matter what country you throw us into, we separate and we rise to the top of every single society. And that's why this holiday is so important to us. You see, there was plenty of oil to take, but that oil was tameh. It was contaminated. It was already with the influence of the goyim on that oil. And because of that, we didn't touch it. We waited out and waited out for a miracle. For that one pach shemen that was untouched, uncontaminated, it was still pure. Do you understand that? That means that Chanukah is about the purity of a Jew. And we got to keep our kids pure. That's the holiday we're into today. So ladies and gentlemen, tonight I'd like to talk to you about this idea. Did you ever think, we have so many beautiful holidays in Klal Yisrael, so many. Most of the holidays, when they remember miracles that took place once upon a time, those miracles were done by great leaders, generally the great tzaddikim of the generation, generally the great gidolim of the generation. Chanukah is the one holiday that you don't find it by the tzaddikim, or by the gidolim, or even by the greatest rabbi of the generation. This holiday was done by kohanim. Ask the Sfat Emet, how come from all the Yeshuot of Jewish history, the only one that was done by kohanim, the only story that we actually have a holiday, the story of Chanukah? Why Dafka was the Chanukah story a miracle al yedei kohanim? So we got to go back a little bit to that incredible night. Yaakov Avinu, he goes back for pachim ktanim. And sure enough, who does he meet up with? He meets up with the Sar of Esav. He meets up with the Samach Mem. And it is over there that the Pasuk tells us, Vaya'avek ish imo adalot hashachar. Could you imagine? He's fighting with this angel all night. They're wrestling. Says the Midrash, says Rashi, I don't understand. What type of fight is this? How does a man fight against an angel. Says Rashi, this was not a physical fight. According to one de'ah, this was a fight of spirituality. It was Esav and the Tum'ah of Goyim that was looking to be mitameh and contaminate Yaakov Avinu. It was Kedusha versus Tum'ah. That was the real fight. And at the end of the night, V'lo yacholo, the Sar of Esav could not beat the Torah of Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu was so powerful, so pure, he was so great in Torah, that he was able to beat the Tum'ah of the Goyim. Finally, at the end of the night, Yaakov Avinu wins. And the angel, Yaakov Avinu, says to him, I'm not letting you leave until you give me a beracha. The angel says, I'm going to give you a beracha. What's your name? My name is Yaakov. No more. No longer are you going to be called Yaakov. From this day on, you're going to be called Yisrael. Isn't that a weird beracha? He asked him for a blessing, and he got a name change. Where's the blessing? No, yesterday they called me this, and tomorrow they call me that, but where's the blessing? He asked for a beracha. He asked for a blessing. And he gave him a name change. That's the blessing? Rabotai, don't underestimate a name. The Gemara Berachot tells us, Shemo ken hu. The name of a person tells you the essence of that person. How many times we went to great tzaddikim in Israel and we put on their table a name of a person written on paper. They never met the person in their life. They take one look at the name and they can tell you everything about the person. I mean, how is that? Because when you look at the name, you're looking at the essence of a person. And if that's the case, Yaakov Avinu turns to the Sar of Esav and he tells him, I want a blessing. And you know what he tells him? What's your name? What's your essence? I'm going to give you a new name. I'm going to give you a new essence, a new koach, through the new name that I'm giving you. He gave him the name Yisrael, Kisarita, because you were able to beat even an angel when he came to be mitameh with the koach of goyim. You know what the name Yisrael stands for? The name of Yisrael stands for the power to be able to keep out the tum'ah of goyim. He tried to breach us. This angel tried to be mitameh Yaakov Avinu, and he wasn't able to. So now I'm giving you a new name. I'm giving you a name, Yisrael. Yisrael stands for the purity of the Jewish people without any tum'ah of the goyim mixed in. So when they come to try to breach us, they come to try to be mitameh us, the name of Yisrael says they cannot break us. We will always stay pure. Just like that night that Yaakov Avinu, in spite of the angel trying to be mitameh, and he withstood, and he remained the pure Jew, which is the name Yisrael. This is an amazing idea. You want to know why? Because it has a lot to do with me and you. We're called Am Yisrael. We're called the pure people. We're called the people that no matter bechol dor vador, omdim aleinu, and they try to get us one way and they try to get us another way. Every generation the goyim come at us in a different tactic. And nonetheless, Yisrael, we're still able to hold strong and remain pure with the name Yisrael. That's what the name stands for. The name stands for holding on to the purity of the Jewish people without allowing the tum'ah of the goyim to breach us. This is the name of Yisrael, Rabotai. Amazing. And now you understand the end of that story. Now you understand that Yaakov Avinu turns back to the angel and says to him, Ma shemecha, what's your name? And you know what the angel tells Yaakov? Lama ze tish'al lishmi. What does it matter what my name is? Why are you asking me my name? And that's an incredible thing. What do you mean? You know good and well why I'm asking you your name. Because the name tells you the essence of the person. And if I know your name, this angel of Esav, then I know how you tick. I know how you work. I'll be able to beat you. I'll be able to tell my kids how to beat you. And he says, Lama zeh tish'al lishmi. What does it matter what my name today is? Tomorrow my name will be something else. Every generation, the Yetzer Hara changes his name. One generation, his name could be communism. Another generation, his name could be fascism. A different generation, his name could be social media. His name could be Instagram. His name could be many different names. Every time he keeps changing his name. And the minute you beat him in one place, he comes back tomorrow with a new name. He comes back tomorrow with a new technique. Lama zeh tish'al lishmi. What does it matter what my name is today? Says Yetzer Hara. I'll be back tomorrow with a new technique, with a new name. And just when you thought you beat me today, I'll be back tomorrow with a whole different game, with a whole different gameplay. Amazing. This was the blessing that we got from the Sar of Esav. The name Yisrael. The name Yisrael stands for the purity of the Jewish people without allowing the Tum'ah of the Goyim to come in. Which is literally the story of Chanukah. That's the name Yisrael. And now you understand. Right after that, when we read the terrible story, what happened to Dinah. Do you know what the brothers came back from the Sadeh? You know what they said? When they heard what happened to her sister, you know what they said? You know what they said to their father? Their father got upset. Shimon and Levi, they went out to wipe out the whole city because they were timeh their sister to such a terrible extent. You know what the words they said? Ki nevala asa bi-Yisrael. It doesn't say Ki nevala asa bebat Yisrael. No. Ki nevala asa bi-Yisrael. An abomination took place in the concept of Yisrael. Yisrael was the name that stood for the purity of the Jewish people without allowing the Tum'ah of the Goyim to breach us. And look what happened to their sister Dinah. They were mitameh her. They broke the name Yisrael. And because of that, Shimon v'Levi achim. Vayavo achim en hasadeh. Says Rashi, who's these two brothers? Shimon and Levi. And when they heard what happened to their sister, they got up and they fought. You were mitameh the purity of the Jewish people? You were mitameh one of our girls? They went out and fought and they wiped out the entire city of Shechem. Amazing. And I want to tell you, if you think about this, where was all the other brothers? Where was everybody else? Where was Reuven? Dinah was his sister too. Where was Reuven? Slicha, where was Yehuda? Yehuda Gur Aryeh. Yehuda, the father of kings, the one of Gvura. Isn't this a moment for Gvura? No? Perfect moment. Perfect moment. The Goyim came. They breached us. Look what they did to your sister. Yehuda, how did they silence the lion? Why aren't you out there? The only ones that got up were Shimon and Levi, Achim. And what's amazing is, do you know, that because they stood up, and because they defended the honor of the purity of the Jewish people, do you know what these two words zochet to, ladies and gentlemen? Let me tell you what they were zochet to, Shimon and Levi, because they stood up for their sister and they did something about it. They stood up for the purity of Klal Yisrael and they did something about it. They did not sit quiet. When they saw the Tum'ah of Goyim creeping into our kids, they didn't sit back and sleep. They didn't say, Inshallah, everything will be okay. No, that wasn't the reaction. They got up and they fought. They did something about it. Shimon and Levi. And you know what they were zochet to because they did something about it? You know what they were zochet to? Take a look later on in the berachot that the children of Yaakov got. Take a look at Parashat Vayichi. Yaakov Avinu, Shimon v'Levi achim, klei chamas mecherutehem. At first, you look at the pasuk, it sounds like that Yaakov Avinu is giving it to them over the head. He doesn't tell them one nice word. He tells them, you two, Shimon Levi, you're always out there fighting. You took the klei chamas mecherutem. You took the weapons from Esav. You went out, you fought. You wiped out Shechem. Wait, 1 second. But then when you take a look at the Rashi on the bottom of the page, Rashi says that this is the spot that Yaakov Avinu gave Levi the blessing that the Kohanim is going to come from him. And from Shimon he got the beracha that all the Rebbes of the young children of Klal Yisrael, the purest of the pure Torah, was given to Shimon. You look at the pasuk and you look at the Rashi and you say, sure. You say, where? I had to do it once tonight. Yeah, okay. But where did that come from? On the top, you hear Yaakov Avinu talking to Shimon Levi, and he's giving it to them hard words. You look at Rashi, and they got the biggest berachot. Where did these berachot come from? If you take a good look at the pasuk, you'll see something. He says, Arur apam kias. You know what Yaakov Avinu is saying? Shimon Levi, what you did was great. But the way you did it was with anger. Anger's no good. There was a famous general that once said, revenge is served cold. Arur apam. It was the af. It was the anger that you did that was no good. What you did was unbelievable. You were the only ones that stood up for the purity of the Jewish people. While everybody else was sleeping, you were the two, Vayavo achim en hasadeh, ki nevala asa b'Yisrael, and they stood up and they defended the Kedusha of Klal Yisrael. Hachzorna achotenu. That's what you do to a Jewish girl? No, my friend. They wipe out the whole city in order to show that they're going to fight for the purity of Klal Yisrael. We're not going to allow the Goyim to breach us. We're not going to allow the Goyim's tum'ah to come into our children, to come into our families, to come into our homes. We're going to fight and we're going to wipe it out. Shimon Levi. But Yaakov Avinu said, without the anger. What you did was amazing, but no anger. It has to be done with a clear head, with da'at Torah, l'shem shamayim. But because what you did was so great, you know what you're getting? Shimon, from you, all the Rebbes in the yeshiva are going to come from. The ones that teach Tinokot Shel Bet Rabban Shelo Chatu. The purest of the pure Torah comes from Shimon. Levi, from you, Kohanim and Levi'im. The ones that are going to take care of God's house. Mishkan, Bet HaMikdash. Because you stood up for the purity, Midah Keneged Midah, your children are going to be the guardians of the purity of the Kedusha of Klal Yisrael. The children and the Bet HaMikdash. Midah Keneged Midah. You defended the purity, your blessing, you'll be the defenders of the purity for all generations. Shimon and Levi. Now I want to show you something that I think is a wow. You're not going to believe this. But that exactly was the story of Chanukah. The story of Chanukah was the story of Dinah all over again. Deja vu. Would you believe that? The Gemara in Ketubot tells us on Dav Gimel Amud Bet, there's a very famous Gemara there. It's an uncomfortable Gemara to speak about. It's known as Hegmon Techila. There was a time, believe it or not, that the Gezerah was so terrible amongst the Goyim that a Jewish bride, the night of her wedding, the governor, he insisted that she comes to his house first, and only then, after that, she can go back to her chatan. Such terrible gzerot we live through with the goyim. Hegmon techila. She has to go to the governor first. Says the Rashi in Yishanim, it's found there in Shita Mikubetzet, he writes, what time period was this gezerah? When did this happen, he asks. When was there ever a period in the Jewish history that we had such a terrible decree from Goyim that our Jewish brides had to actually go back to the governor first? When was this? Says Rashi, you want to know when it was? B'mei Chashmonaim haya. This was at the time of Chanukah, he writes. Do you hear that? That means that in the time of the story of Chanukah, the Goyim were after breaking the purity of the Jewish people. And that was the whole story of Yehudit. Everybody remembers the story of Yehudit, Rabotai. We're leaving Chanukah, we got to leave with the proper lesson. Yehudit was the sister of those great Chashmonaim. She was getting married that night. And everyone was dancing. And the Midrash tells us that she turns to her brothers and she said, "Why are you dancing? Why are you besimcha? Don't you know what's going to happen to me tonight? Why are you dancing?" And the brothers say, "Please, don't make a thing. We'll figure it out." She said, "Yeah." Says the Midrash, she started to do things that looked very embarrassing. And the brothers started telling her, "Please stop, don't embarrass us." And she says, "Oh, now you're embarrassed. But what's going to happen to me tonight? You're not embarrassed." Oh, wow. When they heard that, these brothers, the sons of Matityahu, they went out that night to war. And where did she go? She went to the house of the Hegmon. It's the story of Yehudit. She went to the house of the Hegmon and she had a dagger in her sleeve. She came with cheese. She came with wine. She came into the house of the governor or the general. And she sat with him and she made him eat first. Have some cheese, have some wine. He got very tired. The moment he started to doze off for a minute, she took out the dagger and she decapitated him. She cut off his head. She put his head in a basket, says the Midrash. Forgive me for the detail. Forgive me. And on her way out, she turned to the soldiers outside his tent and she said, "The general said that he's very tired and no one should bother him until the morning." And then she went out to her brothers who were on their way that night. A band of 7 brothers to take on the Greek army of 600,000 soldiers. And she gave them the head of the general in a basket. They took his head and they hung it on the top of the front gate of Greece. And when they went out to war and the army came, hearing a rebellion, and they saw the head of the general, they got so that they started to run. And these 7, 8 brothers started to chase. And they wiped out that night 600,000 Greeks. 8 Jews, 600,000 Greeks. 7, 8 Kohanim. Don't mess with the Kohanim. And they wiped out 600,000 that night. Do you understand, Rabotai, what this is? It's an amazing concept. That means that the entire story of Chanukah was based on a story like Dinah. They were coming to be mitameh our kids. They were coming to be mitameh our daughters. They were literally introducing the story of Dinah all over again. So you know what Borei Olam says? Oh, Greece, Antiochus, you're coming to bring against my children the story of Dinah? Who were the ones that took care of the story in round 1? Shimon veLevi. So now the story of Chanukah, Maaseh Dinah all over again, has to be again brought about through Shimon and Levi. And that's why the miracle came through Kohanim, who's the Shevet of Levi. But where's Shimon in the story? Well, we said that Shimon was blessed as the rabbis of the young children of Klal Yisrael, Tinokot Shobet Rabban. Do you know the story of the dreidel? Do you know what the Midrash says? That right after they kind of did a decree against Torah, they abandoned Torah, the young rabbis and their young little boys would go out to the forest and they would sit and learn in hiding. They would not stop learning Torah even though their lives were on the line. And when the boys would see a soldier coming, they would quickly give the code word and they would put away their Gemarot, they would put away their Mishnayot, and they would start playing with toys. Little dreidels, little tops. And that's where the story of the dreidel comes from. It comes from Chanukah. It was a real story. But many times these boys were caught. And you know what their crime was? that they were learning Torah with their rabbis in hiding, and they took these boys and they brought him, and they literally, with their rabbis, burnt them alive, says the Midrash. They died al yedei Kedusha Hashem for the Torah of Am Yisrael, the pure young children of Am Yisrael. That was the light of Torah. En ora ela Torah. You know where we got the miracle of light from? That it was supposed to light for one night and instead of lit for 8? It was the Torah of the young children of Klal Yisrael that gave their lives away for Torah. It was in their zechut that we had the miracle of the light of 8 nights. In Chanukah, there's 2 miracles. The miracle of the war, 8 guys against 600,000, and the miracle of the light. The miracle of the war was brought about through the Kohanim, that's Levi. The miracle of the light was brought through the young children and their Rebbes, that's Shimon. Hine, says Borei Olam. Greece, you're trying to pull on us another story of Dinah? Who do we bring right back to the cuff? Who was the ones that took care? Who are the guardians of the purity of the Jewish people? Shimon v'Levi Achim. And because of that, if this is a story of Dinah, the miracle has to come out through Shimon and Levi. Kohanim and the Tinokot Shobet Rabban Shalochatu. The miracle of the light of Torah, the young children, and the miracle of the war. This is brilliant. And ever since then, every generation, we have certain very special people that step up, and they are the Kohanim and the Levim of Klal Yisrael, even if they're Yisraelim, because they felt that they have a responsibility to be able to be the keepers and the protectors of the Kedusha of Klal Yisrael. In every generation, you have very special people that took upon themselves to protect the Kedusha of Klal Yisrael. And that is one of the most unbelievable zechut that a Jew can have. It's very easy for a person to hide their face in the sand. It's very easy that when we see society is little by little falling at the wayside, it's very easy to say it's not my business. It's easy that when we start to see, lo aleinu, some of our children starting to go to public schools because the parents say, we don't want to send them to yeshiva because what's the education they're getting there anyways? This is where it starts. We have to fight for every child in Klal Yisrael. They represent the purity. You don't have to be from Shevet Shimon and Levi to stand up for what's right and to be able to protect us from the influence of the Goyim. If we look at some of our weddings today, before COVID came around, who knows? Maybe that was why COVID came around. When COVID came, or before COVID came around, and you walked into one of our weddings, you would start asking yourself, where did certain minhagim come from? In the old country, you tell me, Jacko, you guys were there. In the old country, did they have the boys and girls walking down the aisle together marching? Is that from Shem? No, I didn't think so. Nobody would actually allow something like that to happen in the old country. Never. Not in a million years. Where did these minhagim come from? Where'd they come from? Where's the Makor? It's called 86th Street. That's where it came from. It came from the Italians. It came from the beginning of this community when the first groups came along. Where did these things come from? These are absolute minhagei goyim. How did it get into us? How did it get into us? So a guy says to me, Rabbi, what's the problem? What's the big deal? It's nice. Yeah? A Christmas tree is also nice. It's also nice. It's bright, it's shiny. Instead of putting a star, we'll put Magen David on top. Why not? Lamalo? Why not? It's beautiful. Are you out of your mind? This is the point. The point is that the people that stand up to protect the purity of Klal Yisrael, when the Goyim's influence is seeping in, and boy is it seeping in, their music became our music. Their fashion became our fashion. Their vacations became our vacations. Their cars became our dreams. Their icons became our idols. This is The fight in Galut. It's us versus the influence of the Goyim. And then Chanukah comes, and it reminds us the story of the oil. How the oil, no matter what liquid you pour it into, it doesn't mix. But instead it separates, and it rises to the top. Only when you separate and rise to the top can you illuminate. Only then can you give off light. But if you're mixed in with the schmutz, there's no light to give off. This is what we come out of Chanukah. It's the lesson of Shimon and Levi. It's not just that they stood up for their daughter or their sister at the time that the Goyim broke the Kedusha of the Jewish people. It's that they cared enough to stand up and make a stand. Everyone's so worried about, oh my gosh, I have to do what everyone else does. It's like if you don't go away for midwinter vacation, Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael. Can I tell you an honest story? Honest story. Up until 2014, I lived in Lakewood. Then I moved back to the community after my accident. The driving for 16 years was just too difficult and dangerous. I am telling you a story, emet lamito. I was packing up the minivan, about to come back to Brooklyn on Friday afternoon for Shabbat, which we did for many good years. Hashem should bless my wife. As I'm packing up the minivan, I see that in our very modest Lakewood cul-de-sac, which is a circle of houses, coming down the block, there is a convertible Jaguar. Now, I'll tell you the truth, in Lakewood, the convertible Jaguar hasn't yet made it to that side. You know, we're a town of Honda Odysseys, you know what I mean, and Toyota Camrys. So when you have that car coming down, we're simple yeshiva people. So everyone turns around. Now's the time to say, everyone turns around, and they're saying, what? Mi hu zeh ve'ezehu? Chas v'shalom.
The Jaguar.
The Jaguar, okay. He said, Mi hu zeh, who's this guy? So I look, and I smile, and that was it. All of a sudden, as the guy gets closer to my house, he looks up and he screams, Rabbi! Rabbi Duvi! I turn around. I can't believe it. I know the guy very well. I come running up there and say, hey, Shalom Aleichem. I said, you lost? You missed exit 105? I mean, what happened? He says to me, no. I'm here in Lakewood for Shabbat. I said, really? Why? He says to me, now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not exaggerating. I'm giving it to you the way it happened. He says to me, Rabbi, can you keep a secret? I said, yeah. I'll never say it on camera in front of 1,000 people, no. He says, Rabbi, can you keep a secret? I said, yeah. He says, this weekend, January 15th, it's midwinter. I said, yeah, okay, so. He says, Rabbi, I can't be caught dead in the community this weekend. I didn't have a good year this year. I don't have the 30K to drop. And because of that, me and my wife, we made up that we're going to just disappear for the weekend. And when we come back, when everybody comes back, they're going to say, so where did you go? And you say, we found this new island. Yeah, Lakewood. we found this new island that they went away to because they just wanted to get away from everybody. He says, Rabbi, we're just here for the weekend. I'm staying by my brother-in-law. But please don't tell anybody, because if the word gets out that we were here, do you understand I don't know if you understand what went down. I don't know if you understand what's going on. You know, we're very quick to say when it comes to certain things, that's not our way. That's not our way. We have our minhagim and we're strong. We are very quick to, that's not our way. I came to a parent begging to send their child to Israel for 6 months after high school so that he'll be able to get the ta'am of the Torah of Eretz Yisrael, and for the boy to grow up a little bit, and he can get out of the house a little bit and actually become a man with responsibility instead of being babied. And I begged the mother, please, I begged the father, please, just 6 months. And the father says, Rabbi, that's not our way. I said, okay, that's not our way. It's not our way. This is our way. This is our way. $30,000 travel, that's our way. Boys and girls walking down the aisle hand in hand, that's our way. All of a sudden, this is our way. We're very quick to use it when we need it. Very quick to use it when it works for us. That's not our way. Going to Israel to learn Torah is not our way. But all the other things that we took from the Goyim, all right. Don't be small, Rabbi. Don't be small. We have to stand up for Hashem's honor at the times when the breach of Klal Yisrael and the influence of the Goyim is coming amongst us, and boy is it stealing our kids away. The great Rabbi, Rabbi Hanan Wasserman, Zechet Tzadik L'Bracha, he said right before the coming of Mashiach, there's going to be 3 signs. He wrote this in his book, Ikvita de Mashiach. The first sign, right before Mashiach comes, it's going to be as if time is moving so fast. A year is going to feel like a month. A month is going to feel like a week. And a week, the person's going to blink and he's going to say, wow, it's already Shabbat. Where did the week go? That's the first sign before the coming of Mashiach. The second sign before the coming of Mashiach, he says, is that the isms of the world will disappear. All the big superpowers, the isms, communism, socialism, fascism, all the famous isms that were so powerful in the last decade. Today, man dechar shmeh. Whoever looks at them anymore, whoever knows about them anymore, they became like pixie dust. They became like nothing. Exactly the way he said it. He said it's 1930. Mamash divrei nevuah. And you know what the third sign is right before Mashiach comes? There's going to be a war over every single child in Klal Yisrael. And that war is us against the streets. And it hurts me to tell you that we might not be winning that war. And although on the outside everything looks great, but on the inside, as parents, if we don't step up and take a stance and realize how dangerous the influence of the Goyim and the garbage and the schmutz that's out there today, that's so easy and accessible to one little press of a button, to one, you give a kid an iPhone at the age of 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and there's no filter on that phone. Shema Yisrael, what's going to happen? And even if they're not looking at terrible things, but there are such open forums, there are chat rooms, there are people that he can start to connect and talk to. Or maybe better yet, there's an Instagram, there's a WhatsApp. They could start making all different types of interesting videos and getting thousands of likes. Likes. And then you know what the kid says at that point? Out there in cyber world on social media, I'm a rock star. And at home, I'm a nobody. Where do you think this kid is going? What do you think is pulling him? You think you have your hand on him? Yeah, Rabbi, the father tells me. I'm gonna, if I find my son, I'm gonna do to him what my father did to me. Yes, good luck with that. Let me know where that gets you to today in America. Let me know. But please don't call me 2 o'clock in the morning crying that your son didn't come home tonight. Because I get those calls all the time. Rabbi, where's my son? Now you're crying? Now you're crying? Where were you 5 years ago when I told you don't do that? Don't give him the phone. Put on a filter. Put filters on the computers in your homes. Be careful with who your son hangs around with. Watch his friends. Send him to a yeshiva. Yeah, but Rabbi, the tuition, I understand. It is a problem. There's no question. But I ask you ever heard of life insurance? You ever heard of life insurance? That's a yeshiva today. And life insurance costs money. Good insurance costs money. And that's what a yeshiva is today. It's life insurance. God forbid our kids, oh Shema Yisrael, they go to the public school system. I teach public school kids every Tuesday night by Rabbi Avi Salem. The kids that didn't make it to yeshivot, for whatever reasons, I'm telling you, you have to thank your lucky stars. You have to thank Borei Olam that your children were zochet to go to yeshivot. You don't know what you saved them. You don't know the influence of the goyim. That is the story of Chanukah. Two brothers that stood up and fought for the purity of Klal Yisrael, and they became the defenders of the purity, the Kedusha of Am Yisrael. Man, Shimon v'Levi. Don't ever forget that, Shimon v'Levi. They fought for it. Those are the people we're here to commemorate tonight. The people that cared so much for Klal Yisrael that they stepped up and they fought for us. I was by a wedding in the community a few years back. And something bothered me very much. A set of parents told the Chatan and Kala that if you want the Mechitzah by your wedding, where the men and the women will not dance together, it's your wedding. You're Chatan, you're the Kala, it's up to you. It's your night. Kol hakavod, that's beautiful. They gave them the opportunity and the choice to choose if they want a wedding of Kedusha. Okay. Sure enough, the dancing begins. They bring out the mechitzot, right? That's what they made up with their kids, Chatan and Kala, both. One uncle from the family comes running, L'Shem Shamayim. He comes running. Hasvisha, Baruch Hu Baruch Shema, Hasvisha. You're putting up mechitzot by the wedding? Are you crazy? We need disco. We need to bring disco into the shul of Sha'arei Sion. What's a shul without a disco? He takes down the mechitzot with anger. So it wasn't me, but one rabbi walked up to him and said, you know that the Chatan and Kala really asked for the mechitzot to be up. It means something to them. They wanted a wedding where the boys dance with the boys, the girls dance with the girls, Kedusha of Tahora. That's what they wanted. Respect them. It's their night. They only get married once. Give them their opportunity. He wouldn't hear of nothing. He wasn't a parent, not a father. He was an uncle. Apparently there's a lot of these uncles around these days. Chacham Alber was by this wedding. Me, I'm a Levi. The good side of being a Levi is that you care enough to do something. The bad side about being Levi is what Yaakov Avinu told the Levi, Arur Apam, the Af. And I already felt the steam. And I didn't want to go over because I knew, chas v'shalom, if I get involved, I might chashom say something I shouldn't say. I might come off the wrong way. And you have to be, especially as a rabbi, you have to be very careful. You don't turn off people. But at the same time, you have to stand up for kavod shamayim. It's a very difficult balance. It's a tightrope. How do you walk that? So I said to myself, I'm going to give one try with the master. Chacham Alber, Zechet Tzadik L'Bracha, is the master with people. I'm going to watch him. I'm going to learn from him. I'm going to learn the technique of what works with the older crowd. I know the younger crowd because I grew up with them. I speak their language. The older crowd, they're older than me. So it's hard to tell someone older than you, hey, what you, Mo'ai, it's not nice. So I said, you know what? Let's be smart. I'm going to go to the chief rabbi. I go to Chacham Alber, Zechet Tzadik L'Bracha. I say, Chacham, maybe you can help us. He says, what's the matter? He saw that I was worked up. I said, he says, what's the matter? I said, I'll tell you the truth. The wedding was so beautiful. The chuppah was beautiful. Kedusha, I'm telling you, it was beautiful. Now we come to the dancing. This Chatan, he's a student of mine. He's a tzaddik, this boy. He wants to have a night of mamash, a pure wedding, b'kedusha tahora. The way a Jewish wedding should look. The girl tzaddiket. But it's not even the parents. There's an uncle that just ripped down the mechitzot. And I see Chatan and Kala's hurt. They're hurt. He says to me, yeah? Which guy? So I told him, I didn't want to point, the guy over there. The guy in the corner over there. He said, oh, him? He tells me, I know him. He tells me, Al Tidak. He walks up to the guy. And now I expected him to come with the hammer. The hammer! You know, I expected him to come with the baseball bat. What hammer, what baseball bat? He was laughing already before he got to the guy. He was already laughing. I think he was telling himself jokes. He was already laughing. He comes up to the guy. He starts talking to him. He's laughing. The guy is laughing. They're both laughing. I start to think they're laughing at me. They're both they're laughing. You know, Jacko laughs. They're both laughing. They're laughing. I'm thinking, oh, Lee, this is not going anywhere good. This is never going to happen. All of a sudden, I can't believe my eyes. Not the Chacham, not the Rabbi, not Alber. The guy himself. He kisses the Rabbi's hand. He walks out to the dance floor. He brings back the mechitzot, puts them up in the middle of the floor, and he goes over to Chatan and he tells him, sorry. I'm telling you, this is the story. These two eyes witnessed this story. I went over to Alber. I said to him, Rabbi, I said, teach me. Tell me, what did you say? What did you tell him? He says to me, I didn't really tell him a lot. We started talking a little bit about when he was a kid. He was in my class. I used to teach him this and I used to teach him that. And I told him as a joke, can I teach you one more thing? And he says, Chacham from you? He says, the wedding is beautiful, not just on Aretz, but in Shamayim, when there's a mechitza in the middle. You want this wedding to be beautiful in Shamayim also? Put back the mechitza. He said, yeah. He says, Shamayim, there's a wedding going on now? He says, yeah. He says, the grandmothers, the grandfathers, they're all dancing in Shamayim. But if you want them to dance separately, in Shamayim, you got to put up the mechitza down here as well. Wow, what a chap. He said, the guy liked it so much. He went out, he put up the mechitza. He stood by the mechitza. Don't anyone touch the mechitza. It's unbelievable. What a smart, now he's good uncle, right? What an unbelievable way with people. But I want to tell you something. But that shows you that he was there to always step up for us. And he took responsibility for us. You need to know something. I'm going to tell you over just briefly a story that you already know. In 1973, 1974, the famous Yom Kippur War. There was a famous story that I bet everyone here knows. It's represented by a picture that hung in Alber's house in Israel, that you were able to mamash. He said that was one of his favorite pictures. But you look at the picture, it's a very eerie picture. You wouldn't expect that to be his favorite picture. Let me tell you the story behind this picture that you already know. But I just want to bring out a point. Because one night, the middle of Yom Kippur War, 73, 74, there was an Askan, maybe the president of the community, a man by the name of Salim Totach. He comes knocking on the rabbi's door at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, in the middle of the night. He wakes up Chacham Alber. And he tells him, Rabbi, you have to come right now. Right now, it's emergency, you have to come. He takes him out to the Bet Kfarot, to the cemetery, and there was one of the generals of the army. Chacham Zaki Aseh was there as well. Famous story. And he sees on the ground, they were either 18 or 20 coffins. And the general turns to Chacham Alber and he tells him, I know that you Jewish people, before you bury your dead, you say a Kaddish, you say tefillot for the dead, for the neshamot of the deceased. I'm giving you an opportunity to right now say the tefillot before we pushed them in the hole. There was a big hole, push them into the ground. Alber, I don't know how he came up with this brilliant, on the moment, he came up with this brilliant concept. He went and he opened up every one of those 18 or 20 coffins, and he looked at the face of every one of those Israeli soldiers. You have to understand, these soldiers were killed in Yom Kippur War. They were captured. Their bodies were captured by the Syrian army. They were brought back. They were going to be dumped in a hole. But no, they wanted the rabbi to have one opportunity to make that last Kaddish for them, that last El Maleh Hamim for them, before they push them into the... So what did Alber do? He's unbelievable. He opens up the coffin and he looks at the face of every single one of those soldiers. And he remembers those faces. Why? I mean, who would think about that? Who would do that? Who would do that? You know why he did it? Because he felt responsible for Klal Yisrael, for all of us. And he says, one day I might have to stand and testify to who these soldiers were. I'm going to have to go home and tell a wife that she's not aguna, but that she can remarry because I witnessed the death of her husband. Or maybe I can go home to a family in Israel that are wondering whatever happened to their loved one that's MIA, that never showed up. And he can give them closure that, yes, I saw your family member, he was buried. I saw those faces. I remembered those faces for the sake of their wives, for the sake of their families, their mothers that need closure to know what happened to their boys. That's someone who took responsibility for their community. That's someone who stepped up and did incredible things at the moment that we needed him most. And he delivered. And when you lose someone like that, you lose a pair of very big shoes. And we need people to step up and fill those shoes. It's not possible to fill those shoes, but at least for people to care enough to still want to go out and stand for the purity of Klal Yisrael. When we see that that purity is being breached, and we see the influence of the Goyim attacking our families, our kids, we should care enough to stand up and say, stop, and fight for it. That's the story of Chanukah. Like the oil, we don't mix, we separate, but that's when we light up. These are the stories that they tell about great Jews. This is the story of Alber. He says that that picture was one of his favorite pictures. He had it on his wall in Israel. He used to look at that picture. It reminded him of how many years ago, all the way back, 1973, 1974, he's standing there with Chacham Zaki Aseh and with Totach and with the general, and they're about to push our Israeli soldiers killed in Yom Kippur War into the hole. What is he doing? What is he thinking? Everyone else is thinking Kaddish. No, that's not what he's thinking. That's not how Alber is thinking. He's thinking the wives. He's thinking the families. He's thinking the moms. I got to see who they are. I got to testify one day that I saw these boys and they were buried properly. That's someone who took responsibility, someone that stood up for Klal Yisrael at the time that we needed him the most, and he delivered for us. Today we can be those people. Today we have families like a Hamra family, like beautiful families. They stand for the Rabbanut of our people. They stand for the concept of this unbelievable idea of Chanukah. The people that still care enough for God's honor, that they didn't just throw it all away in America. They didn't just come to a land and say, you know what? It is what it is. We're here, khalas. It's done. It's not the old country. No, you're wrong. Our kids are thriving. Our children are doing great in yeshivot. You wouldn't believe how many of your kids are coming to night seder. How many of our children, this past week we had a Masechtathon in our shul. 200 guys were Mesayem Mesechet Be'ah together on the third night of Chanukah. And many of them were our kids, our son-in-laws, our children, our sons. 200 guys. You couldn't fit in the room. We had to set up chairs in the hallway just to make the siyum. We have an awe in our community, but who are the keepers of that light? Who are the keepers of that purity? Who's fighting this war? We need to take this lesson from the Chacham. We need to take the lesson of Chanukah. Remember those people that were in our lives. They stood up, they took responsibility for us, but now they're gone. Who's going to take responsibility for our children? Chanukah Sameach, ladies and gentlemen.